wages of public sector workers will be calibrated to ensure a balance between burden sharing, productivity, and capacity to pay.
Please read that again.
So wages of public sector workers will be calibrated to ensure a balance between burden sharing, productivity, and capacity to pay. So, first of all, there's a need for burden sharing. Secondly, productivity and capacity to pay.
I like to break things down because words matter.
Sure.
So somebody wrote this sentence bearing in mind the meaning of each word.
Sure.
So they say wages of public sector workers will be calibrated.
Yeah.
Calibrated, Ochede. It means adjusted.
Yes.
Okay. So you are going to adjust the wages of public sector workers. Now, how are you going to do it? Well, you want these wages to ensure a balance between what and what? Burden sharing is the first thing. Let's think about that for a minute. What is burden sharing? Times are hard.
Yeah.
Okay. So you take some burden, I take some burden, right? Okay. So far, burden sharing in this country has been burden carrying by the citizens. Because the government is not really sharing the burden.
At all.
Okay. So when they were writing this and they said this is going to ensure this adjustment or calibration of public sector wages is going to ensure a balance between burden sharing. What they mean is that you, the public sector worker, are going to take on more burden. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Productivity. Well, this is a conversation that has been going on for some time. We've
Sure.
always been trying to link productivity to wages.
Yeah.
So basically what they are saying is that we will pay you based on your productivity. What you do is what you'll be paid for.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. Currently, we all agree that that's not what happens. People are paid far more than they produce in this country. Okay. So that means that if productivity is going to become one of the balancing weights, then you have to ask yourself, are you willing to work longer hours in order to make what you are making today? Work harder, produce more. You have to ask, these questions have to come up. And the final one, capacity to pay.
Yes.
That one, the meaning is not ambiguous. It means that if I have, I'll pay. If I don't have, I won't pay.
Yeah.
So if the public sector wage is going to be on the basis of if I have, I'll pay, well, ask yourself what happened the last time government didn't have. When they had already agreed to a domestic debt exchange program with people whose investments, lifetime investments, had been suddenly slashed because government was broke. After they agreed to those slashes, when it was time to pay and government didn't have money, what happened? They didn't pay. So are we going to see that applied now to the wage bill? When the month is due and they have made you share the burden, they have determined your wage based on your productivity, and it's time to pay. If they don't have, they won't pay you. Is that what they are saying?
Well, I mean, if you, the thing with salaries is that it will not be reviewed downwards now, but the adjustments that you want. I mean, yes, we know that times are hard. We know that inflation is eating our salaries. You know, and even in this document, there's a point that they actually anticipate that the inflation would erode some of the gains, and so they, anticipate a 0.2% of GDP. Now, based on that, Labour would go back to the negotiating table with government. Now, going forward, this is going to be government's position that we are sharing burden. There needs to be productivity, so you're no longer going to be taking the money based on just the fact that you come to me and say that times are hard. Yeah, times are hard, but we have to engage in burden sharing.
Yes.
And then you also would come to the table. You must come to the table with how you're being productive. We're told of how a lot of our public sector workers are unproductive. And most importantly, the reason why I say most importantly is that for those who sometimes want to distinguish between sufficient and necessary condition, this is a sufficient condition. You know, if government cannot pay, you could be productive and everything. But if the money is not there, government will not be able to pay you.
Now, Winston, you mentioned inflation. That's important because even if they are not going to downwardly, what's the word you used? They are not going to
review downwards
anybody's salary. Inflation can give you a pay cut.
Yeah.
So you are you're on the same salary, but everything is more expensive. So suddenly you are unable to afford your own lifestyle.
Yeah.
You are unable to afford your own life. So it is a pay cut.
Of course.
Okay. Now, when you come to the negotiating table, and this is the important part because this is the implication. You come to the negotiating table, and the sufficient condition here is that if I can't pay, I can't give you a pay rise. All right, capacity to pay. So immediately, what this means is that labor might have to flex its strongest muscles, right, to fight in its own favor. Because labor is going to look at what government is spending money on, what government is doing. President has already indicated we are in a hurry to go back and start borrowing. What are we going to be spending money on? They say infrastructure projects are going to be revived. Okay, so what is government spending money on? If labor considers that some of those things are not priorities compared to their wage, they will not ease up. They will flex their strongest muscles.
Okay.
So are we looking at strikes?
Well, that's something that could happen.
But the person says they cannot pay. I mean, let's be quite clear.
Yeah, if they say they cannot pay.
And I think that's the conversation that people had prior to IMF deals all through. It is a period of austerity, proper austerity. But this time around, austerity that's not the one that you can go back and say, let's renegotiate and get ourselves out of this. Yes. If you want to get yourself out, get out of the program and be on your own. But if you get out of the program, you are risking that credibility the policy comes with, which you want to use to enter your capital market, which may not be immediately feasible anyway.
So, Ray, do you now suddenly see the reason why these little gestures that people were calling for, like cut down on, what's it called, the size of your government, cut down on the amount of money government is spending, cut down on the vehicles and all these things, these little things that people were saying, oh, but it will make no difference to the bottom line. Do you now realize how important they are? Because these are the gestures by which labor will judge you whether they should understand your yin timintia or not.
So, and it's true, signaling has always been an important point of what we do. And I don't know what really happened. See, right from the beginning, when we said we were introducing government cutbacks, we couldn't estimate how much that would actually be. You get the point, right? But when we wanted revenue measures put in place, we could easily tell how much that was supposed to be and how much that would bring in and how much that's supposed to help us improve the situation. Immediately it sends a signal that you are not so serious with what you're doing on the other side. In reality, perhaps the biggest problem this government has had is the lack of sensitivity to what people say is wrong and ought to be done. People did not say that collapse the government. They did not say remove everybody from government. The demands were quite clear. Stop these things. Stop this extravagant spending in the areas that we all see. Stop these things that you do that sends a signal that you don't care about the people. But the reaction was that, well, we have tried some of them and we don't think that that's the best way to go. But in these times, you are going to ask the people for cooperation. And that's what's going to happen anyway. Because without the Ghanaian people cooperating, we may not be able to achieve some of these things. You try your very best. If the people say, see, if you raise taxes, and people say we will not pay the taxes, we find alternative means of surviving in this country, a country that's largely in the informal sector. You certainly would have difficulties. If they say they won't comply with your property tax regime and all of that, you would have difficulties. So that expectation that the Ghanaian people are supposed to come along, right from the beginning, it was not done. Indeed, it was almost made to look like, oh, we got it figured out. The most important part is that when we get the IMF deal, we are back to the right course. Now they are beginning to damping that expectation, which you get right, because many people have said it before that the IMF is not a solution. Why has it been the solution? In our last 17 programs, if it was a solution, we would be here today.
Would we have had
So,
something?
in all fairness, it's almost like we just box ourselves into corners. Then later on, we come and create an impression that, oh, well, that's all that we can afford ourselves.